Alrighty, welcome to Trinity Talk Live, water cooler conversations from a Christian perspective. I'm Lori Hinman, Bible study leader here at Trinity, and I'm filling in for Ken Coughlin today so we can talk about the characteristics of a woman of God. For obvious reasons, Ken felt a little unqualified to talk about that, so I'm happy to fill in for him. I have two guests. I have Jan McMillen, who is our women's ministry leader at Trinity for the past 3 years. And she and her husband, Bob, live in Abingdon with her puppy, Zoe. And to my left is Pam Neukam, and she is 30 years old, married to her high school sweetheart, which is awesome. That's Frank. And then she has two great boys, Jacob and Joshua. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to start off with our current event segment and see what stories happen to hit each one of these two ladies. So before we start that segment, though, I just want to kind of give a shout out to those who are experiencing hurricanes and damage and relief efforts going on. Just a prayer of comfort for them and for strength to get through whatever they're getting through. And can't pass today being 9/11. You can't pass today without remembering what happened in New York, and to remember the lives that were lost, as well as the first responders that lost their lives. And so we wanted to remember that. It's not a current event, but the current event certainly is the hurricane. So, all right. So our three current events, ladies. First one is a Facebook video that was just posted on August 29th that has over 21 million views as of this Saturday. The victim shows victims of Hurricane Harvey who were housed in the Lone Star Convention and Expo Center just north of Houston, breaking out into spontaneous worship. According to RelevantMagazine.com, it all began when a local woman, Victoria White, started leading people in singing gospel songs. And she had a really strong, soulful voice, and White says she was unaware it was being recorded, but God had a plan, and she was blown away by the reaction it's received. 21 million views. Your second current event is that in 2016, Russia passed a law called the Yarovaya Law. The law was designed for counterterrorism and public safety. And at the time it was passed, Russian Christians were concerned that it would be used to limit their religious freedom. And unfortunately, it looks like those fears have come true. Forum 18, a Norwegian human rights organization, counted 186 cases filed since enforcement of the law began, with roughly half of those charges being made against Christians. So officials later dismissed about 20% of them, but some examples are a Baptist pastor was fined for allowing children to play on his playground outside his church because they might hear sermons and prayers or gain access to religious literature. And an American missionary was prosecuted for holding a worship service in his home. Kind of concerning. Third one is ChristianHeadlines.com is reporting on 5 ways that Christians can pray for our leaders. The Bible clearly instructs us to pray for those in authority over us, but at the same time that can be difficult because we don't know the lives of our leaders as well as we know the lives of our friends and family. However, there are 5 things that they report that we can pray for them just because they're our leaders. The first is wisdom, that they make decisions and handle crises with that wisdom. The second is surrender. To be able to surrender their own desires and to lead with the greater good in mind. And strength. Pray that our leaders would have the strength they need to accomplish the huge tasks that they're given. Courage, that they be brave in the face of opposition. And they would listen to God rather than the naysayers. And integrity. And to keep them from being dishonest. So, there's our 3 current events, so I'm going to start with Jan. And I'm going to ask you, Jan, did any of those stand out to you?
Number 2 did the Russian law that was passed. It's good for every country in this time nowadays to have laws and guidelines in place for terrorism and public safety. You never know what's going to happen. Look at London, the recent bombing, multiple bombings in London. But it also, it puts fear in people too. As I said, the Christians there were afraid that their religious freedom was going to be affected, and indeed it appears to be being affected that way. And I mean, you had Russia that was the communist, and one ruler, a dictator, everyone did what they said, and then they tried to move to more of a democracy, kind of people had freedom, could move around a little bit.
Right.
And now it seems like they're moving back to this controlling state where the government's telling you, you can't do this, you can do this, but you can't do that.
Right.
And so it is another example of Christian persecution that's been going on since the beginning of time.
Yeah, the beginning of Christianity. I would love to know the statistics of, there were 186 cases filed against, and half of those were Christian. So that's a lot. That's a big percentage, and I'd love to know what all those cases were, because I think it'd be interesting. But Pam, what stood out to you?
I think the first story stood out to me.
Okay.
There's a lot going on in this world, as Jan was saying. There's a lot of terrorist attacks. There's natural disasters. There's a lot happening that's not good. And I think that it's a very good example of how we are supposed to act when bad things happen. Bad things are going to happen. The Bible says that. You will have trouble.
Yeah.
Jesus said, but take heart, I overcame the world. So that's what we're supposed to do, and I think it's a great example of not just how we should act in those times by ourselves, but she was spreading joy to others who may not have had that in that situation, and I think it was beautiful, and her voice was beautiful too.
Oh, did you hear it?
I
didn't hear it.
Now I'm
going to have to go listen. We'll be 21,000,001.
There you go.
And
By
two.
the time.
I have to listen to that.
Yeah, I think anytime you can spread peace and comfort in a horrible situation like that, I think it's what we're called to do as Christians. We're called to bring the gospel, the good news. And so she was spreading the good news, which is awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Texas is full of very large Baptist churches, so hopefully, they have surrounded those communities with love and grace. But it sounds like at least she was. She was doing that. All right, well, let's get down to our topic of the week. We're going to learn about what does it mean to be a woman of God, a woman with a heart for Christ. So we're going to start off with a passage that kind of makes me cringe when I hear it. And that, of course, is Proverbs 31. And if you've never ridden through the Old Testament book of Proverbs, this is a chapter that is full of ways to identify a woman of God. And it is quite the list. When you're talking about Christian women, we have to kind of consider this text just because it's so well known in the Bible. So I've given them copies of this, and I'm going to read a little bit of it here, but I'm not going to read the whole thing. But I'm going to ask you guys what parts stand out to you, and which parts of it do you think are the most important for a woman with a heart for Christ. So I'm just going to read a little bit of it. A woman of noble character, who can find? She is worth far more than rubies. Her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. She gets up while it's still night. She provides food for her family and portions for her female servants. She considers a field and buys it. Out of her earnings, she plants a vineyard. Here, she makes linen garments and sells them and supplies the merchants with sashes. It goes on and on and on. And I figure I can't do the first two, the two of those that I read. She gets up while it's still night. That's not me. And she makes linen garments and sells them, and I can't sew at all. So I fail at part of these things. But so what do you guys think when you read Proverbs 31? What stands out? Pam?
I think for me, at the end of Proverbs 31, that you didn't just read, what stands out to me is where it says, "Charm is deceptive, and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised." For me, that sums up the entire Proverbs 31, because it talks about the duties and how we should serve others with a joyful heart. And I think this day and age, especially for my generation, we seem to focus a lot on outward beauty and not so much on inward beauty. And I think that is probably the one thing that I know I could work on the most, is to not focus so much on what's happening around us and what society says we should focus on, and focus on what God says we should focus on, and that's what's on the inside.
Yeah.
So that stands out a lot to me.
And nowhere in, even though it's quite a laundry list of things that she does, none of those say she goes out and has her hair done every week.
Right.
So we should probably take heart in that. How about you?
This is a hard list to stand up to.
Yes, it is.
I think one of the things that speak out to me the most is she opens her arm to the poor and extends her hands to the needy. Growing up, I'd always been involved in church and, helping others, and you would save up your quarters in the little folder, and that would go to muscular dystrophy and, clothing drives, things like that. But for me personally, this really changed in 2014 when I joined Lori and went to Haiti on our first international missions trip. And to be in that third world country, to actually see it for yourself, to look those people in the eyes, to talk to them, to embrace their lifestyle while you're there, to eat their food, to sleep in the type of housing that they sleep in. It just really changes your perspective, and it changed my heart personally for missionary work and for going even further outside that, comfort box to work with the needy and to help the poor. And there's not a day goes by that I don't think about Haiti and those people, and especially last year with the devastating hurricane, and then right on the path of that this year, Irma, which was supposed to be a worse hit than it was, and just praying that they would be safe. But that really just changed my perspective on what it means to reach out your hand and help the poor and the needy.
And I think as women, one of the things that we're good at, I think, is we have compassionate hearts. It's just kind of not that men don't, but I just feel like it's kind of something that makes up a woman's personality. So I think it's natural for us to reach out to the poor and the needy. I think it speaks to our mothering natures, and we just that innate, inborn nature of nurturing people. So let me go a little bit different now. Let me talk about some role models. We recently did a study on Sunday mornings, and it was called 7 Women and the Secret of Their Success. And so the book gave 7 examples of women that were just kind of standout women within history. So the examples were, and you'll recognize most of these names, but Rosa Parks and Mother Teresa, a lady named Saint Maria of Paris, which you probably don't know, but you may know later, Susanna Wesley, Hannah More, and Joan of Arc. Now, these ladies obviously stood out immensely in world history, especially people like Mother Teresa, Rosa Parks, and Joan of Arc. But we may not be called to do what they did in our daily lives, but what we found through the study was that there's still lessons to be learned for them, and some of those we talked about were like perseverance and using the talents we have for the betterment of others and those kind of things. So I'm going to give you 3, I'm going to give you a quote from the book about Susanna Wesley. She was the mother of a whole bunch of children, but John Wesley was the one who probably made the most impact. The manner in which she taught her children greatly influenced the work of her son, John, and the Methodist movement he founded led to world-changing revival and to such an array of social reforms as can never be calculated. So all she did was do the best she could at raising her kids. And that one of her kids changed the whole world, started the whole Methodist movement. So you see what a role she had in his life. Even though she wasn't the one to change the world, she kind of was, because of her teaching. But I'm going to give you 3 people that are a little bit more recent. There's a lady named Antonia Brenner, and she was a person who decided to become a nun And they didn't want her to become a nun because she'd been divorced. But she decided she was going to start her own order of nuns. And she decided she was going to live in a Mexican prison. And so she spent her life, the rest of her life, living in a Mexican prison among the prisoners and just teaching them. This is a fascinating story. And I think of the book called I Am Malala. I don't know if you know that, but she was shot by the Taliban for standing up for education. And she's been, gone on to do speaking and that, but she was incredible. She was 15, and she stood up and started speaking about education for women and was shot. So, and then maybe something a little bit more contemporary, but you have the obvious president's wives and movie stars and things like that, but how about the Krista McAuliffe, who went up on the Challenger, and who would have been the first teacher in space, but who today are some Christian role models? Who do we have to look forward? Anybody want to take that?
Oh, I'll start. I wrote down a few that we kind of people look to. Roma Downey, she was the producer of the Bible. She also was in Touched by an Angel. And her husband started Operation Smile, which they would go over and fix cleft palates in children in the third world countries. Anne Voskamp, she wrote 1,000 Gifts. And throughout the book, it was a little challenging. She wrote in a different style that I'm used to reading. Lori read that. But she tried to encourage people to see God in the ordinary and not just look for the big miracle or the great happening, but into the everyday things. One she looked at, she went out in the field at night because it was a full moon and it was in October, a full harvest moon. And she talked about just the beauty and seeing God in that instance. And a lot in today's world, people don't take the time to see God in the little things. They're too busy with keeping up with the neighbors or going after that next promotion or how much money do I have in the bank. And they miss so much in the everyday, in the tiny blessings.
Yeah.
And another favorite of mine, Christine Kane. She founded A21, which is an anti-human trafficking organization in Europe. They rescue women and children captive in the sex trade. And that really spoke to my heart. And I took it back to my board, and the women on the ministry board embraced it, and now we're part of the Samaritan Women, which is an organization that helps women rescued from human trafficking.
Local and
It's
within
local.
Baltimore,
It's
yeah.
in Catonsville, yes.
Yeah.
So they were just a few of ones that I kind of look to that have given me inspiration.
Pam, did you find any Christian role models for today?
I didn't have that many. I actually
okay.
had a hard time with this one, unfortunately, but the only one that really stood out to me was Priscilla Shirer. I don't know if you know who she is. She's Tony Evans' daughter, and I'm a big fan of Dr. Tony Evans.
He's a good guy.
Yeah, I love a lot of his Bible studies. We actually did a small group study on kingdom marriage with our small group recently, and we're getting
there
ready
you
to
go.
start raising kingdom kids.
Okay. Cool.
So, and I did, Kingdom Women.
Okay.
And I'm inspired by their writings. So for me, the things that she writes along with Dr. Tony Evans they speak to me. So that was who came to mind for me.
Yeah, she's a good lady, and she was in. Help me with the name of the movie
The
that
War
she
Room.
was just in, The War Room, right? And which I thought was a great thing. But she's a great speaker. I think she's very comfortable being up in front of people. Maybe that comes from being Tony Evans' daughter, but I don't know if that's like innate in her. But she's a good speaker, and she gets to the heart of things, and I like the way she doesn't back down. That's the one thing I like about her dad.
Yes.
Is that he doesn't back down. He tells it like it is, and if you don't like what the Bible says, well, I'm sorry, but that's what it says. I can't sugarcoat it.
Exactly.
So that's good, yeah. So we have so many places to go here. Let's talk about TV and entertainment. Ken Coughlin talked about Christian men on his segment, and he talked about stereotypes of men on TV. And unfortunately, there are just as many stereotypes of women on TV as men. So what are the stereotypes we see in media today?
That's a hot topic for me. They're usually opposite ends of the spectrum. You have your daytime soap operas where they're all wearing their cocktail dresses to work. They're all CEOs of companies. They have like 50-carat diamond rings on their hands, making buku bucks, and maids and nannies and everything. And then on the opposite end of it, you have the stay-home moms, which a lot of times they portray as unable to control their kids, can't keep their house clean, it's a mess. At the end of the day, they're just like, oh. So it's somewhere in the middle is a true.
Is a reality, yeah.
Is the reality, but it's not on TV, and it's not what is influencing our young people. And I mean, they see these women and these girls that are like a size 2, and their hair's always perfect, their nails are always done, makeup, and they just go around, and that's not reality. And when these girls come out and reality hits them in the face, it's a life changer for them. And it's we're just
crazy, right?
not portrayed very truthfully. I'm sure there's women at both ends of that spectrum in reality, but the majority of us
we're somewhere in the middle. How about you? What kind of stereotypes do you see?
I think the last thing that Jan said, where that's what stands out to me, is you see a lot of Hollywood moms, and you only know they're pregnant right at the end, and then everybody's praising them. You right on the cover of the magazine, so-and-so had a baby, and look, she lost all of her baby weight 2 days later. It doesn't happen that way, and it's okay that it doesn't. And I think that's what's been hard for me, having 2 children, and it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to not look like a movie star after you've had 2 children. There's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly.
And that's not what we were made for. That's not what motherhood is. So that's what stands out to me, is everything is always about outward appearance.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the funny thing about celebrities is that a lot of them can afford to have a maid.
True.
And a nanny, and
yes.
So maybe they have time to go to the gym 8 hours a day and lose all that baby weight. But the rest of us who are not sleeping and trying to keep up with all the diapers, we don't have that time.
Right. We have our priorities in a different place.
Yes, absolutely. Let's go with stereotypes of Christian women. I'm going to name one that just comes out to me, but Sheldon's mom on Big Bang Theory, okay? She's the one that just stands out in my mind. I'm sure there are others, but I have to remember that on that show, every character is a stereotype. I have to keep that in mind, because sometimes the things she says, that the point that they're trying to make about Christian women, I really get offended at. So I have to really step back and say, okay, everybody's a stereotype, and I'm sure, the Jewish people are not happy, with Wolowitz, and you know what I mean? Everybody's probably, feeling the same thing, their stereotype is against them. But what do you think TV and entertainment says about Christian women?
I think Sheldon's mother's a good example, but I think they're usually portrayed a lot as, Bible-thumping, straight, stiff-laced, we don't have any fun kind of thing. And I think of the grandmother on the Waltons.
Okay.
If anybody remembers the Waltons. I mean, she was really strict. You don't do that, and always fussing because kids were out playing, having fun, and you shouldn't be making noise and things like that. And I think we get a bad rap as stereotypes that
I think
were not real.
anytime you stereotype somebody, no matter what they are, you lose the difference. And I forget which one of you said it, but the reality is somewhere in the middle. Right. The reality is that nobody's like this, and nobody's like this. We're somewhere in the middle. We're a little mix of, we can have our glamorous days, and we can have our sweatpants and t-shirt days. And but yeah, I think stereotypes just really don't. don't help the discussion at all. Let's go one more question. I think we have time for one more. What kind of things, I'm looking at the church today, and I'm wondering what kind of things are available within our own church for women, and why do women, and men for that matter, need things just specifically for them? You go, Saint.
I think for me, what we have at church is Mom's Group. Mom's Group has always been a blessing to me. When we had Mom's Group during VBS, it was just, I always walk away feeling so refreshed from it. You're sitting down with a group of your peers that are not necessarily in the same season of life as you, but they're either in it or they've been in it.
Right.
So even on those days where you feel like you're the only one in the world, you're at a table full of people who at one point thought they were the only one in the world, and none of you really were.
Right.
So Mom's Group for me has been a huge blessing, and I think that we need that because men and women are created differently. Our minds are not wired the same.
Right.
And though my husband is amazing and he's very supportive, he's a man.
Right.
He's not a woman.
Right.
So as much as we raise the same children together, I see things differently than he does.
Sure.
And he's never been pregnant or delivered a child, so he'll never understand it at the very least, that aspect of it. So so we just need, you need to be around people who get you just because they've been there.
Yeah. And so the Moms Group obviously is just for moms. But your small group is couples, a lot of couples, right?
Yes, so our small group is amazing in that aspect because we have moms and dads, but we also have the little ones. So our children can interact with each other. They get to see mom and dad and fellowship with each other.
Right.
And so we get that, like I said, we just did the Kingdom Marriage Bible study on our own over the summer. So being a young couple with young children, there's a lot of challenges there. So you're with a group of people who are facing the same challenges, and it's very uplifting to leave those small group sessions having talked about some challenges, and we share ideas for how we work through things, and you don't feel like you're the only one.
That's
and
right.
The advice that you're getting and the fellowship, it's biblical.
Yes.
So your friends are praying with you. So you can say, we're facing this issue, and someone can say, we've also faced it. Or, wow, we're here for you, and we're praying for you. And that's amazing.
That's good.
Yeah.
Jan, how about things that the church has, other things other than Moms Group?
Well, the Moms Group, we have Thursday morning women's Bible study, which is an amazing study. We have women from 5 or 6 different churches that come each Thursday morning for Bible study. And this has been going on for, almost 20 years or so?
15, 20 years or something,
And there's a core group of women that have been in this study since the very beginning, and they keep coming back. And it's a wonderful place to be with other women, to be with people that are going through what you've been through or, have been or, and also to be with other women that you can pray for.
Right.
You pray for each other, you pray together, and it's just it's a wonderful, wonderful study. We have women's retreat. We usually go away for the weekend to Sandy Cove, and it's just women. We do a Bible study. We have a lot of fun. We laugh, play games, have our own worship service on Sunday. Women's Christmas party. Teas, we have a fall tea and a spring tea, which is sold out every single year with that. And the numbers keep growing. We started at like 30-some people, and now we do like 50-some people at a tea. So,
and all those things are different parts of what women need. It's fellowship, it's study, it's community, it's Bible study, it's kind of everything all together. Well, I think I know for me, I would love to chat with you guys all day, but we are going to run out of time if we do that, and Ken on the other side of the camera is going to throw things at me. So thanks for tuning in. If you like this video, please click the like button and comment here on the YouTube page. The more likes and comments we get, the more it helps us to get the podcast distributed to our viewers. So we'll be back, or Ken will be back, I should say, next Tuesday at noon. Next week's topic is honoring Christ in entertainment, and the guests will be Ryan McAllister, contemporary music leader here at Trinity, and also special guest Alan Scott of the Alan Scott Band, and they've been at our church a couple times. So subscribe to our channel so you can stay up to date. There's a lot more on the Trinity Joppa YouTube page channel than just Trinity Talk Live. So we invite you to check it out. And again, thanks for tuning in.
In your word we will follow.